fourth year resident, surgical C ward, KTH. Today am I audible?
A bit loud, Zakir, please.
Yes. Today I am going to present a case scenario of a female 33 years old married lady from Mardan presented through OPD complaining of neck swelling for the past 1 year. According to the patient, she complains of painless swelling in front of the neck, which was noticed by her family more on the right side of the neck for the past 1 year. The swelling is rapidly growing in size for the past 2 months and is not associated with any breathing or swallowing difficulty. There is no history of unintentional weight loss, no palpitations and tremors, no heat or cold intolerance. She has no history of sweating. She has normal bowel habits. She has no history of abdominal pain, no history of any bone pains or depressions, no history of headache, nor any history of bleeding per rectum. She has history of irradiation to the neck in her childhood. She is a non-diabetic and normotensive lady. She has no history of gallstones, renal stones, nor any history of benign or malignant lesions of breast and uterus. She underwent epigastric hernia repair 10 years back. The per-op and post-op course being unremarkable.
Sorry, Zakir, but your sound is not adequate. And
is it all right now, sir?
I don't know. You just continue.
Yes, sir. She takes Panadol on and off for body aches. She has no known allergy to any drugs or food. Neither she has any history of anti-arrhythmic drugs. She is married for the past 15 years, having a 3-year-old daughter and 3 sons. Bowel and urinary frequencies are normal. She is neither a smoker, alcoholic, nor any type of addiction. She uses iodized salt. Her appetite and sleep are normal. She has positive family history of thyroid illnesses. Her sister was operated for MNG 10 years back. She has no family history of any suprarenal, parathyroid illnesses. She has no history of colorectal polyps and breast carcinomas. She has no history of diabetes and hypertension in her family. She is a poor lady whose husband is a farmer and live in their own kacha house. Coming to systemic review, and she is in CNS. She is no nervousness, irritability, and insomnia. Okay. She has no history of cough or change in voice. Her appetite is normal. No loss in weight. No change in bowel habits. No intolerance to heat or cold. She suffers generalized body aches and she has no hand tremors. Her gynecological
Zakir voice.
Hello?
Yes.
Am I audible? Yes. She has no difficulty in swallowing, nor lower abdominal and flank pains, and normal bowel frequency. Based on my history, my provisional diagnosis was a thyroid neoplasm, and my differentials are solitary thyroid nodule, thyroid malignancy, and MNG. Now coming toward the examination of the patient. Maria. General physical examination. Patient was examined and a socially acceptable exposure after informed consent. On general physical examination, she is a young lady with thin belt. She was sitting comfortably, well-oriented in time, place, and person, and having neck swelling mostly on the right side. Her palms are normal, having no tremors and no signs of ophthalmos. Coming to our vitals, her pulse was 70 beats per minute and regular. Blood pressure was 135 by 80, normal temperature with respiratory rate of 19 per minute, and she is afebrile. Coming to thyroid examination, on inspection, she was having an asymmetrical, right-sided irregular swelling, 4 into 5 centimeter, with distinct edges. No scars or visible nodularities. The swelling moves with swallowing a sip of water. Tongue protrusion was not done. Skin doesn't show any inflammatory signs, and the neck veins are non-distended. And there was no signs of any ophthalmopathy. Coming to palpation, there was a 4 into 5 centimeter asymmetrical swelling occupying right side of the neck, which was firm to hard in consistency with irregular margins. The overlying skin had normal temperature and was non-tender. Skin is pinchable and the swelling is mobile and non-pulsatile. I could feel the lower border of the gland 1 centimeter above the suprasphinal notch. Trachea was central. Palpations of both carotids was done separately, and pulsations were appreciated on both sides. Coccus test was negative. There were palpable cervical lymph nodes in the anterior triangle of the neck that moved easily in transverse plane. However, no lymph nodes were palpable in posterior triangle and supraclavicular location. A percussion over the sternum was resonant. On auscultating over the superior pole of the thyroid, I was not able to hear any bruit. Coming toward the thyroid status examination, there was no ophthalmopathy like exophthalmos, lead leg, lead retraction, blinking, etc. No signs of thyrotoxicosis. Biceps and ankle reflexes were normal. There was no signs of any proximal myopathy. Examination of the oral cavity was normal. Skull examination does not reveal any bony swellings. Examination of other flat bones as ribs, sternum, and vertebral column also did not reveal any bony swellings or bony tenderness. In systemic examination, she was having normal vesicular breathing, which was clear on auscultation. She was having no added sounds, and heart rate was 70 beats per minute and BP was 135 by 80. She was having a scaphoid abdomen with a ventral hernia repair scar in the midline, soft and non-tender, no visceromegaly. And she was intact in time, place, and person. I am summarizing my case. A 33 years old female from Mardan area presented with complaint of right-sided neck swelling for the past 1 year, which is rapidly increasing in size for the past 2 to 3 months and is not associated with any difficulty in swallowing and breathing. She gives a positive history of childhood irradiation and a strong family history of thyroid illnesses. She denies any history of thyrotoxicosis, any history of abdominal pain, bone pains, gallstones, renal stones, as well as breast and colorectal carcinomas. On examination, she is a young lady sitting comfortably. There's an asymmetrical large swelling on the right side of the neck that moves with deglutition. The swelling is firm to hard in consistency, and she has palpable cervical lymph nodes in the anterior triangle of the neck. She has no signs of thyrotoxicosis, nor signs of ophthalmopathy. She has no bony swellings or tenderness. Rest of her systemic examination was unremarkable. My clinical diagnosis based on the history and examination is euthyroid malignant thyroid swelling, thyroid carcinoma with cervical lymphadenopathy.
Okay, you have done with it?
Yes, sir.
Right. So you had a patient who gave history of neck swelling for the past 1 year, but for
Yes,
the
sir.
past 2 to 3 months, it grew rapidly in size. Although she did not have any evidence and any history of suggestive of hypo or hypothyroidism, hypothyroidism, or any pressure
Yes, sir.
symptom. But why did you ask about bleeding per rectum?
Sir, I was worried about her polyps, colorectal polyps.
So what's the correlation of thyroid disease with polyps?
So there are two syndromes that are related with the papillary thyroid diseases, especially papillary carcinomas, Cowden syndrome and Gardner syndrome.
Okay, Gardner syndrome and right.
Cowden syndrome.
So, and what was wrong with her sister?
She was having a multinodular goiter. She's a positive family history.
Okay, right. She had a thyroid disease in the past for which she was operated.
Yes, sir.
What kind of operation was
10
done
years
for
back, she
that?
was operated for. Total thyroidectomy was done for her.
Total
Multinodular goiter.
thyroidectomy. And what was the biopsy report like?
The biopsy report was colloid goiter.
Colloid goiter. And you did mention about history of irradiation in the childhood of the patient. What was that irradiation for?
Yes, sir. Sir, it was for thymoma.
Sorry?
It was for thymoma, sir, thymoma.
So the patient has history of thymoma for which neck irradiation was done in the past.
In our childhood.
Okay, and when did it happen? Like,
sir, it was when she was 8 years old.
when she was 8 years old. So we will take just a comment on this topic from Professor Asif Karim, whether thymoma is nowadays treated by radiation or not, or it's just obsolete. So Professor Asif Karim Saab.
Well, I don't think so. If it is symptomatic, then you can go for the treatment. But so far, if it is asymptomatic, then you have to wait and observe.
Right. So, I mean, irradiation for thymoma, for adenites is almost obsolete now. Either you go for a definitive treatment and or leave it alone when it's asymptomatic. Right. What kind of malignancies are associated with neck irradiation in the past?
So papillary carcinoma.
Papillary carcinoma and
Lymphomas.
And lymphomas, right? And is it dose related to the irradiation or not?
Yes, sir, it's dose related, but I don't know the exact doses.
Right. Okay. on examination you did, what were your findings on examination which were suggestive of your diagnosis of being it a malignancy?
Sir, it was a firm to solid inconsistency, irregular swelling, mostly on one side of the neck.
Can you increase the power and quality of your mic, please?
Ji sir, ji sir.
I mean, most of the participants, they are unable to hear you properly.
Yes, sir. Am I audible clear now?
No, don't know. Okay, so what are these points?
Sir, on examination, the swelling was irregular, asymmetrical swelling, soft to firm in consistency, irregular margins, that moves with deglutition, and there were palpable lymph nodes.
Okay, every thyroid swelling moves with deglutition, number one, but the points
Yes,
which
sir.
favor your diagnosis are irregular margin, firm to hard inconsistency, and few palpable lymph nodes in the interior triangles. Are these the points?
Yes, sir. Lymph nodes in the anterior triangle.
Okay. Did you examine the oral cavity and other ENT examination?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oral cavity was examined. There was no lingual thyroid, sir.
Okay. And did you examine the rest of the head and neck region?
Sir, I examined the skull of the patient.
What you were interested in?
Sir, for skull mets, bony swellings.
Skull mets. If your diagnosis is the right one, so there could be chances of metastasis in the bones, especially in skull bones. Right.
Yes, sir.
And you specifically mentioned about the history of gallstones. What's the correlation?
Sir, I was interested in digging out the history of paraneoplastic syndromes, men, for parathyroidism.
Okay, parathyroid. So parathyroid is associated with gallstones.
Renal stones. I was more interested in renal stone, but I took the history of gallstones as well.
Okay, so you did not mention about the renal stones, and but
I mentioned it here.
okay,
I mentioned
okay,
it.
right. But still, we can't hear you properly. If you can work on that, I will be thankful to you. So apart from the findings which you mentioned about in this patient, what could have been other symptoms and signs, especially, which could lead you to a proper diagnosis of thyroid malignancy of carcinoma of thyroid? Was the swelling fixed or it was mobile? Hello? Hello?
So I think he's
Zakir?
at Mike. You can ask this question.
From the audience, you can unmute yourself and you can answer this question.
If there is a fixed hard mass, if there is a rectolaryngeal nerve involvement, hoarseness of the voice, sudden increase in size, pain.
Sorry, who is this?
This is Dr. Akil.
Sorry?
Akil.
Dr. Akil. So there can be change in the voice, number one. There could be fixity of the swelling to overlying structures, to skin and subcutaneous tissue, or fixity of the structures to underlying structures also. Right?
Can be dysphagia.
Yeah, in history, the patient can have dysphagia, shortness of breath, stridor. Right? So, suppose
there
if you
can be
come across a
hoarseness of
swelling,
voice.
yes, right. Suppose if you come across a heart swelling like this, what other possibilities come in your mind?
Could be
Apart from
anaplastic.
carcinoma, what other tumors or what other conditions of the thyroid can have hard consistency?
Anaplastic carcinoma.
Apart from malignancies,
Sir, calcification and thyroiditis.
Yeah, calcification can lead to hard consistency as well as thyroiditis. how you can confirm the calcification in thyroid?
By doing X-ray and X-ray.
Right, excellent. What's the importance of absence or displacement of carotid pulse?
So
Very
it is
science.
discussed by huge thyroid swellings, maybe
Sorry?
a multinodular goiter or thyroid malignancies.
I mean, what's the logic?
So
Sir,
a
in
malignancy, basically, they engulf the carotid sheath. Basically, that is lost. Carotid pulsation, we are not able to feel the carotid pulsation.
Okay, so why there should be absence of carotid pulse in malignancies?
Because the malignant lesions engulf the carotid sheath and we are
Okay,
not
they
able to
encase it.
palpate it.
They encase the
In
carotid
cases,
sheath.
yeah.
Yes, right. So you did mention about the interior triangle lymph nodes, but you did not mention exactly what kind of lymph node you were able to palpate.
So I palpate in the interior triangle, but
Interior
they are
triangle.
basically prelaryngeal.
What are different levels of
pretracheal.
lymph nodes in the neck?
So basically, there are 7 levels of lymph nodes in the neck.
Yes.
Level
What
1
are-
is submental and submandibular with preauricular. Submental, submandibular, and preauricular is level 1.
Yes.
2/3, 4th are upper 1/3 of jugular, middle 1/3 of jugular, and lower 1/3 of internal jugular vein. 5th is posterior triangle, 6th is interior triangle, and 7th is mediastinal.
Right. So what other, I mean, if you are looking for the lymph nodes specifically, it means you are interested in the stage of the disease, right? So what are other modes of spread of carcinoma thyroid? And what are the common sites of distant metastasis?
Through blood and lymphatics, sir. And
Yes,
common side, I
lymphatics
guess
you already
it's
mentioned.
skull. The skull.
Okay.
So
It
question
can
was,
spread within
what
the
was
thyroid. It can spread outside the thyroid. So outside the thyroid, it could be lymphatic. It could be hematogenous spread. Lymphatic spread is to the anterior and cervical lymph node, Delphian lymph node, superior mediastinal lymph node. And distant spread could be breast, bone, I think adrenals as well.
Yes, you're right.
There could
It
also be a
can-
local invasion of the structure.
Right. I mean, if it spreads through the lymphatics, it spreads to the regional lymph nodes first, levels of lymph nodes. And thyroid, lymphatic drainage of the thyroid is upwards as well as downwards, laterally and medially. Okay, and if it spreads to distant organs through hematogenous route, so there could be, most of these metastases, they go to lungs and then to bones, and then to other structures like liver, kidney, adrenals, pituitary, and skin also. And the commonest bones which are involved are
Humerus, skull bones.
innominate bones are the first one, then long bones, and then flat bones. Sternum, whatever, and every bone can be, right? What other tumors can spread to bones?
Prostate, lung, breast.
Sorry?
Prostate, lungs, breast.
And renal cell carcinoma.
Yeah.
Tell me how you will investigate such a patient after you have examined her properly and you have come to a provisional diagnosis of thyroid carcinoma. You're not sure, still not sure what kind of thyroid carcinoma is it, but you are of this suspicion. So how you will investigate to confirm or otherwise of your diagnosis?
You can take a biopsy from there.
Sorry?
Either we can take a, if there is a, sorry, if there are lymph node involved, we can take a lymph node biopsy or the thyroid mass.
Where is the main presenter?
FNAC.
Starting from the basic, first is ultrasound.
Okay.
Ultrasound, TFTs, and then we can go for an ultrasound guided FNAC.
Dr.
Excellent.
Zareen,
Yes, sir.
is the Zakir here? Who is the
I
main
think
presenter?
Zakir is not around.
I
Hello,
have a
Zakir.
few questions I would like to ask from him, if he's here.
Sure, sir.
Is Zakir available?
Maria?
I
Hello?
don't know. He's having some difficulty with the mic.
Okay,
Okay.
then. Okay, when he's back, we'll ask him. Okay,
Sir,
so
you can put your
continue.
question to the rest of the participants also.
Why he jumped directly to the malignancy of the thyroid? What were the points in favor of that diagnosis?
Yes, why the topmost diagnosis of malignancy was labeled?
So can I answer this one?
Anybody? Yes, you can answer it.
So because of the one is because of the rapid increase in size, and then the second point was because she had a childhood history of irradiation, as well as on clinical examination there were lymph nodes palpable.
And consistency also.
It was firm and the margins were irregular.
And it was a unilateral swelling. That I guess also goes in favor of carcinoma.
But there are so many points against the malignancy. There was no weight loss, no change in voice, no dysphagia, no pain. So why he jumped directly to the malignancy? And one thing, if the patient had received radiation in the childhood, on the one hand, he's saying that she received radiation in the childhood, and on the other hand, he is relating this swelling with the family history of the patient that her sister had some thyroid problem. So these are the two different things, because if you are suspecting submalignancy because of the radiation, again, the diagnosis, the final diagnosis of the type of the tumor will be totally different from the one which you are correlating with the family history.
Yes, sir.
You got my point?
Yes, sir. So the
If
correlation
you are,
of micronodular goiter, her sister, it seems not relevant to this carcinoma.
What I could understand is that because of family also have a history, he might be living in endemic area where some iodine deficiency and thyroid goiter is already there. So the presence of malignancy is slightly increased if there is already present some goiter swelling in the thyroid. That probably might be the only reason. That's good.
Okay. So regarding the diagnosis of the disease, first of all, you have to, basically we are dealing with a solitary thyroid nodule in this case also. As Asif Karim Sahab has rightly mentioned, like there could be other possibilities also apart from malignancy. So every possible diagnosis should be kept in mind, and the patient has to be diagnosed or has to be investigated accordingly. So just like the clinical diagnosis is one thing, then you have got imaging, and then you have got FNAC, and ultimately genetic factors they are also of some contributory importance. So what imaging investigations are to be done?
So ultrasound?
Yes. How ultrasound can help you in diagnosing the disease?
Sir, basically there is a classification system based on ultrasound which will predict the risk of malignancy and swelling.
Yes.
That's called TIRADS classification.
Excellent. So
yes,
what are the ultrasonic findings favoring malignancies?
The ultrasonic findings are irregular with microcalcification, hypoechoic, and taller than wide.
Right. Usually the echogenicity is they are less echogenic. Number two, there are central calcifications, and they are in the form of microcalcifications. and there can be increased vascularity, and there is no distinct edge or margin is seen on ultrasonography, unlike that of benign diseases. So apart from the tumor or the mass in the thyroid, which you can diagnose and you can see with the help of ultrasonography, what other information the ultrasound can give you regarding malignancies?
Lymph nodes.
Yes, number of lymph nodes, level of lymph nodes, and again the sonographic,
nodes.
again the sonographic features of lymph node enlargement also. So what are those sonographic features?
Sir, calcifications, they are wide in shape. They are loss of fatty hilum.
Yes. Again, increased vascularity, microcalcification, and rounded in shape and loss of fat in the hilum. And there can be extra capsular extension also. So all these features are suggestive of sonographic evidences of malignancy. Okay. Apart from ultrasonography, what other investigations you are supposed to perform?
So FNAC.
FNAC.
We have to do
TFT.
Any comment by Professor Asif Karim? Hello? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. FNAC. How FNAC is being done and how helpful is it?
So basically, palpable large swelling, we do are rough kind of FNAC, but ultrasound guide FNAC is the best one.
Yes. And what is an inadequate aspirate in FNAC?
Basically, it depends on the number of cells.
Is it Zakir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You're back. Okay, continue.
Yes, sir. It depends on the number of cells, sir.
Okay, so just tell me exactly what is the number of cells.
There are 6 types of cells with 10 number of cells in each. And inadequate smear is hypocellular or acellular.
Okay, ideally speaking, that the adequate aspirate is the one in which you can see in a field 6 clusters of cells, each cluster containing of 10 cells. So minimum of 50 to 60 cells should be included in the smear. Otherwise, it is known as inadequate or acellular smear. So how do you classify the FNAC findings?
So, there is a classification system for that. Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, Type 4, and Type 5.
Yes.
Type 1 is non-diagnostic. Type 2 is non-neoplastic. Type 3 is follicular. Type 4 is suspicious for malignancy, and Type 5 is malignant.
Okay. So there's a little bit of modification in the Bethesda system classification of FNAC, that one is inadequate aspirate, 2 is a totally benign cells, 3 is atypia of undetermined significance, or these follicular cells of undetermined significance, and 4 is follicular adenomas, follicular neoplasms, 5 is suspicious of malignancy, and 6 is malignant cell. Right? Is there any role of true cut biopsy in thyroid diseases?
Yes, sir. True cut biopsy can be done for lymphomas.
Okay. What other diseases?
And anaplastic carcinoma.
Okay. And what are the complications associated with true cut biopsy?
True cut biopsy can lead to bleeding, pain, and tracheal injuries.
Injuries to vital structures, because neck is a very important area and you can injure any structure inside. And on the other hand, you can detect a lot of diseases from FNAC only. What is the only drawback of FNAC?
It does not give a clear-cut indication of follicular carcinoma. It doesn't differentiate between follicular carcinoma
and
adenoma.
follicular carcinoma and adenoma cannot be differentiated from each other. Otherwise, you can diagnose anaplastic carcinoma, lymphomas, and other types of papillary carcinomas also.
Even by
Okay.
FNAC.
Yes. And what other investigations you're going to perform?
Sir, TSH, TFTs?
Yes, that's already been mentioned.
Yes, sir. X-ray chest, skull, and neck.
Okay, X-ray neck, X-ray chest, and X-ray skull again. Yes, you're right. What else?
Yes, sir. And when there is a suspicious of a nodal disease or local invasions, we will go for contrast imaging with CT.
Okay, CT and MR are only done for patients who are supposed to have retrosternal extension, for anaplastic carcinomas, for suspected case of vascular encasement, or for
Yes.
soft tissue involvement also.
Yes, sir.
Any role of PET scan?
Sir, PET scan can be done for METS workup and medullary carcinoma thyroid because they
Yes.
are not avid to radioiodine. Because they are avid to radioiodine.
Yes. What else? It's indicated in patients who are suspected to have distant metastasis, especially in aplastic carcinoma and Hurtha cell carcinomas, and in high-risk differentiated thyroid carcinoma also, in patients who are having raised level of thyroglobulins. Other investigations?
So we should screen the patient for paraneoplastic syndromes.
If there is a suspicion, you can do that also. Like
patient with MEN2A, MEN2B.
Bone cancer.
bone scan. Okay. Yes.
And
What do you subject the
radioisotope
patient?
scan. And radioisotope scan if there is nodularity with toxicity as well.
Okay, if there is nodularity with toxicity, that makes an indication for radioactive isotope scan. Will you subject this patient to indirect laryngoscopy?
Yes, sir. That is an important investigation, especially for medical legal purposes as well. If we are planning to operate the patient, so pre-op you should know that the vocal cord and each and everything that is normal.
Asif Saab will comment on it. How much are the chances of hidden vocal cord paralysis, and how much important is this investigation? Asif Saab. I think sir is disconnected. What do you think? What are the most common reasons for carcinoma of thyroid?
Most common reasons for carcinoma of thyroid are long-standing goiters, family history,
Yes.
history of irradiation.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Goitrogens, hypo and hypothyroidism in few cases.
Okay, one is known as ionizing radiation. One is known as ionizing radiation. The other is known as neck irradiation. So both
Yes, sir.
are the predispositions for malignancy, and even the thyroiditis can be a predisposition for
Yes, sir.
malignancy of thyroid.
It has an
And
increased
certain
risk
genetic
in
factors,
female.
genetic
females.
factors are also responsible. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What are different types of thyroid carcinomas?
Thyroid carcinoma is basically classified into two types: benign and malignant.
Yes.
Benign are follicular adenomas and
I'm talking
malignant
of thyroid carcinoma.
Yes, sir.
The question is thyroid carcinoma.
Yes, sir. They're classified into primary and secondary.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Primary can be of follicular cells, parafollicular cells, or lymphocytes. Follicular cells give rise to two types of carcinomas which are differentiated: papillary and follicular carcinoma. Parafollicular cells give rise to medullary carcinoma, while lymphocyte give rise to lymphomas.
Yes, true.
Yes, sir.
What is
And
the most
secondary
common and what's the least common malignancy in thyroid?
Yes, the most common is papillary carcinoma, 80%. 10% is follicular carcinoma, 5% anaplastic, medullary, and 2% anaplastic, and 2.5% lymphomas.
Okay. And can you name few differences between the two categories of differentiated thyroid carcinomas?
Differentiated and undifferentiated.
Yeah.
So
No, between the two categories of differentiated thyroid carcinoma, DTC.
Yes, sir. Between the papillary and follicular carcinomas.
Yes.
So papillary are basically multifocal, while follicular are unifocal. And
Yes.
papillary lymph node metastasis is there, and follicular hematogenous mets to the mets occur through the blood.
Yes.
The mortality rate of papillary is lower than that of follicular.
Yes.
And there are various gross differences in histopathology of both the tumors.
Yes.
There are papillary structures in papillary carcinoma which are absent in follicular, while capsular and vascular invasion is absent in papillary, which is present in follicular carcinoma.
And can you name few other variants of the papillary carcinoma thyroid?
Yes, sir. There are basically other types of variants: encapsulated variant of papillary carcinoma, diffuse sclerosing variant of papillary carcinoma, and follicular variant of papillary carcinoma.
Yes. And what is Hürthle cell carcinoma?
Hürthle cell carcinoma is basically a follicular carcinoma, which is composed of oxyphil cells, which has more oncocytic properties. It is an aggressive tumor than follicular carcinoma with a poor mortality than follicular.
Okay, right. Okay, just coming to the treatment of a disease. Once you have diagnosed that the patient is having a differentiated thyroid carcinoma, DTC, based on FNAC findings. So, and how do you stage the disease?
So basically, there are two staging systems: TNM staging system and AGCC staging system.
Yes.
Yes, sir. In AGCC staging system, age is the most important one. If less than 45 years with no mets, it is stage 1.
Yes.
If less than 45 with mets, it is stage 2. And above 45, if T1 less than or 2 centimeter, it is stage 1. T2 is stage 2. T3 are central lymph nodes, that is stage 3. And peripheral lateral lymph nodes are local invasions or distant mets, stage 4.
Right, agreed. So this is basically a brief system of the staging system. Age is the only factor in staging of the disease, right? Sorry, it's the only disease in which age is one of the factors for a staging system.
Okay.
So why do you stage the disease? Obviously, it is to outline the treatment plan for. So suppose a patient who's having a papillary carcinoma of thyroid in the right lobe, in this case, is 3 centimeters in size, and there is no evidence of distant metastasis, but few of the lymph nodes, and as in your case, they are clinically palpable, but they are not histologically proved to have malignancy. So how do you plan your line of action for such a patient?
So in this patient, we will prepare the patient. She will need surgery in the form of total thyroidectomy with functional neck dissection, and then we will prepare the patient for radioiodine.
Okay, so you will do a total thyroidectomy in this patient. So what other kinds of thyroid surgery are available for malignancies apart from total thyroidectomy?
Sir, if it is a low-risk patient with unifocal disease, we can do a lobectomy as well.
So lobectomy alone can be a possibility. There can be total or near total thyroidectomy, and then there can be total thyroidectomy with some additional measures in the form of central compartment dissection or this functional neck dissection.
Neck
So,
dissection.
yes, total thyroidectomy is done for patients who are high risk patients.
Yes, sir. Yes,
with
sir.
a tumor size of more than 1 centimeter.
And
with
age greater than 45.
Yes, and history of malignancy in
Irradiation.
close relatives of the patient, with history of irradiation like in this patient, and with nodal or distant evidence of nodal metastasis.
Yes,
Suppose you have done an FNAC for a patient and there is non-diagnostic biopsy. How do you deal with such a patient?
If FNAC is non-diagnostic for, you mean, sir, if there's a confusion between follicular and papillary?
No, a non-diagnostic means inadequate aspirate, or cells are not clear-cut. I mean, you did not reach to a diagnosis, and still the adenoma is there.
Yes, sir. So if the adenoma is there and ultrasound, we can classify it on image-guided. We can get a conclusion from ultrasound.
No, ultrasound is gone now. I mean, the biopsy is inadequate, and ultrasound has already shown you that there is a mass. So how you deal with such a patient?
Sorry, sir, I'm not able to.
Okay, either you repeat the FNAC, or suppose on repetition of FNAC, again the picture is the same. So then you decide on the number, on the size of the tumor. Suppose if it's more than 4 centimeters, you go for total thyroidectomy. Or if there is any evidence or any suspicion of papillary thyroid carcinoma on FNAC, again you go for total thyroidectomy. Or if there is any family history of PTC, again it's an indication for total thyroidectomy. And once again, if there is history of irradiation to the head and neck region, so just go ahead. If it's a smaller size with no family history suggestive of malignancies, thyroid malignancy, with no irradiation, with no multifocality, so you can rely on only lobectomy, right? So what are the, yes, sir.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We were looking for you, sir.
Oh, I lost my connection. Yes, you asked the question about the non-diagnostic FNAC. So you mean,
yes, sir,
Bethesda Taiwan. You are asking about Taiwan. So yes, if you get a Taiwan, the recommended British Society of Thyroid Diseases recommend that you should repeat FNAC. You should do the ultrasound again. You should correlate your findings of ultrasound with the clinical findings, but FNAC must be repeated under ultrasound guidance. And if it is inconclusive, then you have to wait. If you are strongly suspecting on clinical ground that it is a tumor, and if it is less than 4, then you go for diagnostic hemithyroidectomy. And then you plan according to your final diagnosis on histopathological examination of the removed specimen. So that is the protocol if you get FNAC Taiwan.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. In which condition you have to go for central compartment dissection? Hello, Zakir?
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, 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 we can hear you.
Okay. So central neck dissection basically of 2 types, therapeutic and prophylactic central neck dissection. So if the lymph nodes are clinically palpable or are detected on ultrasound, you will go for central neck dissection. Or if there is any local invasion, chances of local invasion, you should go for central neck dissection.
Okay, so what does it include? What do you mean by central neck dissection?
So basically it includes a thyroid, thymus, and lymph nodes in the prelaryngeal, pretracheal, paratracheal, and tracheoesophageal groove.
Right. And what do you mean by functional neck dissection?
Functional neck dissection basically includes the removal of the lymph nodes along with the fat surrounding it. and fascia surrounding it.
Where exactly?
In the posterior triangle.
Okay, so what structure you're supposed to preserve and you have to safeguard them?
We have to preserve internal jugular vein, carotids, and accessory nerve.
And what about the sternocleidomastoid side muscle?
Along with sternocleidomastoid.
Okay. Is thymectomy a part of central compartment dissection?
I think so, sir.
Okay. Suppose, as Professor Asif Karim has mentioned, you have got some ambiguity about the diagnosis of the tumor is of less size and there is no high risk patient, and you have gone for lobectomy, and it turns out to be, which is known as surprise histology, turns out to be DTC or differentiated thyroid carcinoma. What should be your line of action?
So basically, if it turns out to be a differentiated carcinoma less than 1 centimeter, so there is no,
Yes.
no need of any further surgery or radio iodine
Yes.
without lymph node metastasis. But if it turns out to be a tumor with greater in size, with favorable and high risk factors, we should do a completion thyroidectomy.
So what other indications are there for completion thyroidectomy?
So one is for this radio iodine uptake, radio ablation, we should do, and for surveillance,
Okay.
post of surveillance.
I mean, the completion thyroidectomy indicated, number one, if you want to subject this patient for radioactive iodine ablation for surveillance, so you need to remove the thyroid tissue, whether normal or abnormal, right?
Yes.
And number two, what other, suppose if there's a tumor on the other side, that will be gone. And what are other indications and purposes of completion thyroidectomy?
If she has a bilateral disease, nodule in
No,
the
I'm
other lobe of the thyroid.
you. But suppose if you are subjecting this patient to surveillance in the form of thyroglobulin tumor marker, so for that, again, the
Yes, sir.
normal thyroid tissue has to be sacrificed and it has to be.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. So we were talking about the functional neck dissection.
Yes, sir.
Functional neck dissection. So what are the conditions in which you will make it sure that the nodes in the frontal and the posterior triangle, they are enlarged?
So basically in the tumors of the head and neck region.
Sorry?
Tumors of the head and neck region.
Yeah, no. I mean, how
Yes,
you'll
sir.
make it sure that the lymph nodes in the posterior triangle are involved and you plan for functional neck dissection.
Yes, sir. So we should first feel it whether it is clinically palpable or not.
Number one.
Ultrasound features of the lymph node.
Yes.
Yes, and biopsy.
FNSC again can
Histopathological
help you whether they're involved or not. And if anything is negative, so once again, during exploration of the neck, you have to make it sure on frozen section that these lymph nodes are not
Yes, sir.
involved, right?
We should.
So if frozen section are suggestive of involvement of lymph nodes, again, you are subjecting this patient for functional neck dissection.
Sir,
Okay.
is it really necessary to go for radical neck dissection with the availability of these new modern adjuvant radio and chemotherapy? So is it really necessary to go for radical neck dissection?
Yes, I mean, surgical removal of the disease is the primary course of the illness, right? And we will discuss about the other modalities of treatment also. But the primary aim is to go for the resection of the tumor along with the regional lymph nodes, if they are involved. Okay, on the other hand, suppose you have got a patient who has got locally advanced disease involving the trachea and esophagus. So how you can investigate such a patient apart from the routine investigations, and how do you deal such a case?
So in this case, you will go for contrast imaging with CT. Detect the
CT of
extent
the
of the
neck.
disease.
Yes.
CT of the neck and chest.
Yes.
And also work up for distant mets.
Okay, distant mets. Okay, right. What are other local investigations to confirm the extent of the disease, apart from CT or MR?
So bronchoscopy and endoscopy.
Ultrasound.
Yes, upper GI endoscopy,
Ultrasound.
bronchoscopy. So that will make you decide what is the local extent of the disease. So how do you deal such a case? Suppose there is a, after resection of the thyroid along with the local regional resection, there's a rent formation in the trachea. So how do you handle such a situation?
If there's a rent in the trachea, sir, during para,
Yes.
sir, it should be repaired, sir, during surgery.
Actually repair, how can you can repair it?
I don't know.
Defect is small, you can
Lateral-
primarily repair, or if you can involve the plastic surgeon, we can do a flap rotation and they can cover the gap.
Yeah. Any take on this subject from Professor Asif sir?
Okay, if there is a rant, it depends upon the size of the rant. The best would
Yes.
be the management of the patient. If you get a rant during surgery, the first will be to do the tracheostomy to make the patient safe. Because if you do repair on the same sitting, there might be a problem post-operatively for the patient, especially airway problem can occur. So you have to protect the lower airway, do the tracheostomy, and then whatever you want to do, if you involve the ENT surgeon or the plastic surgeon to repair the defect, then
Yes.
that can be done later on as well. But you have to
Yes.
protect the lower airway, you have to do the tracheostomy.
Right. sir.
That is the safest
Sir,
way
is
to
there any role
for
of
the patient.
is there any role of endotracheal intubation to keep the tube for 72 hours, and then we have to again relook for the thing and keep the
Well,
patient on the ventilator?
the best option will be to do a tracheostomy, to put the tracheostomy tube in with the cuff, and you awake the patient, observe the patient for 48 hours. If the rent is big one, you can then go for second repair of the defect.
Right. Okay, sir.
Tracheostomy will be much better than endotracheal intubation and putting the patient on ventilator for 48 hours.
If there is any kind of the esophageal injury after resection, so there can be later injuries can be primarily repaired. If there is a major injury or resection of the esophagus is needed, so obviously it has to be replaced, or it has to be repaired by gastric tube or by free jejunal loops, flaps. So these are the different types of repair work. But one thing has to be made it sure that any kind of repair has to be done before you make it sure that the frozen section is suggestive of free margin of disease, right? Suppose if there are metastatic deposits in the bones, what would you do?
So currently new guideline says that if there's a single METS, we should go for surgery. Otherwise, in differentiated carcinoma, we should go for radioiodine, while in medullary carcinoma, we should go for surgery
Right.
and radiotherapy.
So we are not discussing the medullary carcinoma right now. We are totally emphasizing
Yes.
on the differentiated thyroid carcinomas.
Yes.
So if there is single metastatic deposit, you always go for resection, but make it sure before resecting any metastatic deposit, you have to do chemoembolization of the vessels to decrease the vascularity. Because most of these secondaries, they are highly vascular, they are pulsatile in nature, and you can end up with complications. Okay. For any kind of surgical intervention or any kind of treatment modality, you are categorizing the patients into high risk, intermediate risk, and low risk. So you already just mentioned about the different types of the risk factors. Hello?
Yes,
What
sir.
are the
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
what is the prognosis of DTC?
So it's again depends on the risk stratification.
Yes.
If it is a young patient with low risk tumor, it's almost zero mortality. But if it is an old age with high risk tumor, the 5-year survival rate goes up to 50%. And there are intermediate patients in which there's a young patient with high risk tumor or an old patient with a low risk tumor. They have variable 5-year survival rate.
So the modern guidelines and the recent guidelines and 2020 guidelines, they are taking it as almost a benign disease, and there's nothing like 5-year survival rate. There's 25-year survival rate, and the 25-year mortality is almost 2% in low risk groups, and it goes up to 40 to 50% in high risk groups. Okay, so how do you follow up with such a patient after surgical intervention for differentiated thyroid carcinoma?
So after surgical intervention, we again classify the patient into low risk and high risk. Low risk patients are those who have no local or distant mets. All the tumors are microscopically removed, no local or regional involvement, and no vascular involvement. These are basically low risk patients. And high risk patients are those who have microscopic tumor invasion, incomplete tumor removal, or distant mets.
Yes.
Now, in a low risk patient, there is no further role of any radioiodine or thyroxine. While in a high risk patient, we will prepare the patient for radioiodine.
How do you do that?
So for that, the patient should be off of thyroxine for at least 3 to 4 weeks.
Why so?
Sir, because it's important for the radioiodine to enter the cell, it needs increased TSH level, about 30 international unit per liter.
Yes, on one side, thyroxine is a treatment, right? But on the other side, for the radioiodine, active iodine to work, you have to raise the TSH level. And the raised TSH level is not only for radioactive iodine therapy, it's also essential for getting the scan done and for getting the thyroglobulin levels also, right? So how do you achieve suppose the patient has undergone total thyroidectomy and you are worried about the local recurrence or the remnant of the thyroid. So how do you investigate such a patient?
So then we will keep the patient off of thyroxine and do a radionuclide scan.
What's that scan called?
So, iodine 131 scan.
Okay, it's isotope scan.
Yes, sir.
It's only done for the head and neck region, and which is known as a cervical scan. And the only way to get it done is to low dose of radioactive iodine is used in this case, right?
With 1 millicure, sir.
Yes, 1 milliequivalent. Suppose there is there's evidence of local activity, or if the tumor already was in advanced stage like T3 or T4. So what do you do? How do you ablate?
Then with the radioablating dose, sir, with a high dose.
How much?
30 to 100, sir, at least 100.
Okay, this is known as radio redundant, remnant ablation, right? And that is from 30 to 100 millicurie is the dose for ablation of local, right? So once again, you have made it sure. How you will make it sure that the local tumor is ablated properly and adequately?
Sir, then we'll do a whole body scan. After that, we will again classify the patient into high and low risk. If it is the low risk patient, then no need of whole body scan. Otherwise, you will go for a whole body scan after 5 to 8 days.
Okay. And if whole body scan is suggesting that there's no evidence of distinct metastasis,
then we will repeat this whole body scan after 6 months and then start measuring the thyroglobulin levels.
Okay. So you have to do surveillance of such a patient by thyroglobulin surveillance.
And
How do you
ultrasound.
do? Yes. And suppose if there is evidence of distal metastasis after whole body scan, then what you do?
Sir, again, we will radioiodine with a skeletal METS dose. Distant METS
Okay,
dose.
a high dose of radioactive iodine is given orally for such patients as a treatment for ablation of which is known as radioactive iodine ablation. After the patient is subjected to radioactive iodine ablation, what precautions are to be made?
So there are certain precautions that are taken to be pre radioiodine and post radioiodine.
Yes.
Pre-radioiodine, we should give at least low iodized salt for 10 days.
Yes, agreed.
She should take high liquids, high fluids.
The patient should be made should not be dehydrated. The patient should have no
Yes, sir.
constipation. Just to avoid
No
the
constipation,
complications
no dehydration.
and pregnancy
Yes, sir.
should be avoided. Right.
Yes, sir.
So this was the surveillance program for the post-thyroidectomy patient for differentiated thyroid carcinoma. Okay, just can you briefly tell me about the medullary thyroid carcinoma? What is it, and what are the different factors?
So medullary carcinoma thyroid is basically a tumor that arises from parafollicular cells, which are also called C cells of the thyroid.
Where it is derived from?
It's derived from neural crest cells,
Yeah, ultimobranchial body.
body
Right.
of the neural. Yes, sir.
Yes. What else? Okay, what
And
other
there are two
features?
types of medullary thyroid carcinoma. One is sporadic and the other is familial.
Yes.
Sporadic is the common one, almost 70 to 80%, while the familial is 10 to 20%.
Yes.
Yes, sir. And these
Familial
tumors
again,
secrete
they are.
calcitonin, and
So what's the correlation of medullary thyroid carcinoma with multiple endocrine neoplasia syndromes?
so there are two types of multiple endocrine, MEN1 and MEN2. And MEN2, we have 2A and 2B. In MEN2A, we have medullary thyroid carcinoma, pheochromocytoma, and parathyroid hyperplasia or adenoma,
Yes.
with certain skin lesions like in amyloidosis.
Yes.
And MEN2B, we have this MEN2A plus mucocutaneous neuromas of the head and neck region with Marfanite habitus.
And how do these tumors they do present?
So basically, these medullary carcinoma thyroid presents with, and 30 to 40% present with diarrhea or paraneoplastic syndromes.
Okay. And how do you investigate suspected case of MTC?
So in investigation, we will have to look for certain blood investigations and images. And images we have to do the ultrasound, sound of the
Yes.
neck for medullary thyroid carcinoma, and screening ultrasound abdomen for pheochromocytoma,
Yes.
and blood investigation will include calcitonin, certain carcinoma embryonic incident, and
And you will not go ahead for FNSE?
no, sir, I will go for FNSC if I found swelling lump in the neck.
Okay. How do you treat such a case of suspected or confirmed MTC?
Medullary thyroid carcinoma is being treated with total thyroidectomy plus central neck dissection.
Yes, that's obvious. And what about the functional neck dissection?
If there is no evidence of lymph node involvement in the posterior triangle, there is no need of functional need of the functional dissection.
Okay. What other precautions you have to make during thyroidectomy and central compartment dissection?
If this patient has a history of pheochromocytoma, we will have to first deal with pheochromocytoma, then go for medullary thyroid carcinoma.
And that can be assessed preoperatively by abdominal ultrasonography and the 24-hour urinary catecholamine levels and others.
Catecholamines and metanephrine
But
levels.
specifically speaking about a surgical technique, you have done total thyroidectomy along with central compartment dissection. And what
Yes,
you are
sir.
worried about? What about the parathyroid?
Yes, sir. In total thyroidectomy with central neck dissection, parathyroid should also be removed, and they should be reimplanted on the non-dominant forearm.
Okay. Right. And
Yes,
how do you make it sure that you have completely removed the tumor just immediately post-operatively?
by measuring the calcium level and parathormone level
Oh, I'm worried about the
and physical
MTC.
section of the specimen.
I'm worried about the MTC.
And
How you will
basal
make
calcium
sure
level,
completeness of the resection.
basal calcium level, sir.
Okay, basal calcitonin level or stimulated calcitonin level?
Yes, sir.
Which one?
So unstimulated calcitonin level.
Okay. And how do you screen a suspected case of medullary thyroid carcinoma?
Screening includes, sir, basically for all the three types of organs, that is parathyroid and adrenal. For parathyroid, you should go for calcium, parathormone level, and as well as ultrasound and systemic scans. Or for adrenal, we should go for ultrasound, 24-hour urinary catecholamine and metanephrine levels.
Yes.
And then genetic testing.
Okay, right. And what about for the MTC?
MTC, you should go for ultrasound and FNSC and calcitonin level.
Okay, how do you estimate the calcitonin assay?
I don't know. Sorry, sir.
Okay, for screening purpose, the calcitonin, the basically what happens in the MEN type of associated MTC, there is an initial stage of hyperplasia, which is prior to the proper malignancy of MTC. So the hyperplasic form of the MTC, there is no raise in the basal calcitonin level, but you can induce the high calcitonin level by giving either calcium or pentagastrin. So that is known as stimulated calcitonin level. So basal calcitonin level will be normal and stimulated calcitonin level raised means there is some suspicion of early malignancy of MTC. And what is the role of prophylactic total thyroidectomy in MTC?
So if genetic testing reveals mutation in the red proton oncogene, we should screen the whole family and do prophylactic thyroidectomy in children.
At which
below,
age? At what age?
For men 1, prophylactic thyroidectomy should be done at 3 years of age, while for men 2, it should be done as early as 1 year of age.
Okay. One of the undifferentiated thyroid carcinoma is anaplastic carcinoma. So is it a treatable disease or non-treatable disease?
So it is a highly aggressive, non-treatable disease with a mortality of it is 6 months. The patient dies in 6 months.
Okay, what's the role of surgery in anaplastic carcinoma?
So it's only for palliation. It's only for palliation. We only do stomachectomy if the patient is respiratory compromised.
Okay, and what other information you'll gather from stomachectomy apart from relieving the trachea?
Biopsy, sir.
Biopsy. Okay, and if the patient is fortunate and the disease is only intrathyroid and there is no local extension, so can you go ahead with total thyroidectomy in that case?
Sorry, sir, I don't know. What's right on that? If you only go for.
And what about lymphoma? Any information about lymphoma?
Yes, sir. Lymphoma is basically a tumor that resembles anaplastic carcinoma and arises from in the setting of autoimmune thyroiditis like Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And there's no role of surgery in lymphoma, only radiotherapy and chemotherapy plays a role.
Right.
And it's diagnosed by true cut biopsy.
Excellent presentation. And I think it should be the end of this. Any question, Professor Asif Karim, you're asking from the candidate?
No, thank you very much. It was a quite good presentation initially by Dr. Zakir and the rest of his colleagues. I enjoyed a lot. Your teams are as good as you.
Nice.
Can we repeat
Mari,
how do we like screen the family about M1 and M2? What age?
Sorry, what's the question?
Can you repeat again how to investigate the family in M1 and M2? Familial screening, at what age they should be started? I just missed that.
MEN 1 and 2. Sorry?
Yes.
Yes. So it should be screened from 5 to 50 years. Screening should start from 5 years onward. With genetic testing.
Any other question? Maria, please entertain the questions asked in the chat box or questions asked by hand raising.
Yes, sir. So there was one question that after radioactive iodine ablation, it is advised that the patient should quarantine. Why is that?
Nowadays, quarantine is not a difficult job.
It is just to prevent the radiation to, especially to the kids and to the pregnant women.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
And for
that's right.
It about
For
48,
how long?
maximum 48 hours. 40.
Okay. There's a question from Asif Karim Saab. Is there any role of chemotherapy and differentiated and undifferentiated carcinoma thyroid?
Yes, sir. There's undifferentiated thyroid carcinoma. Sorry, and medullary thyroid carcinoma, tyrosine kinase inhibitors like cabozantinib or vandentanib are used nowadays.
Yes. These are all respiratory measures and recurrent, locally extensive or metastatic thyroid carcinomas in which every kind of treatment can be used, ranging from the best one would be radioactive iodine ablation. If that doesn't work or the tumor is resistant to that, you can go ahead for external beam radiotherapy and chemotherapy also. But the results are not that good. So any take on this subject from Asif Karim Saab?
Well, chemotherapy is considered to be the mainstay of treatment in case of anaplastic tumor. If it is resectable, the ideal would be to go for surgery and followed by chemotherapy. For the rest of the tumors like papillary and follicular, chemotherapy has no such great role. The mainstay of treatment is surgery.
Okay, there's one question from audience. Any role of POET in thyroid malignancy? Okay, one thing which is very important is for as the hematological surgery is concerned. The POET means endoscopic thyroidectomy, right? So if the tumor is smaller in size, there is no capsular invasion, there is no multicentricity, and the tumor is there is no locoregional extension. So that can easily be done endoscopically, and the tumor has to be handled properly, and it has to be removed in a retrieval bag, right? But it is not done for larger size tumors with extensive thyroid tissue involvement, or if there's any chance of seedling of the tumor, the endoscopic surgery should not be performed. Another question, Maria?
Yes, so the role of frozen section in biopsy of differentiated thyroid cancer.
Okay, Asif Saab.
Well, it depends on totally on the competency of histopathologist. If you have a competent histopathologist, he can help you a lot.
Also, so there's a that if thyroid.
Just a minute, Maria, just a minute. Asif Saab has rightly said that there should be a proper arrangement inside or nearby OR for frozen section availability, and proper histopathologist who is trained in frozen section. Frozen section is not like routine histopathology. It's totally a different specialty, and it's a different competency. If you have got the facility for frozen section and you have the expertise, frozen section has got a bigger role for achieving the resection margins. But if you don't have the facility, obviously you have to rely on the traditional things. Next. Next question hai?
There is a question that if a thyroidectomy has been done and it comes out to be follicular carcinoma, do we need to go for completion thyroidectomy in every case?
Again, Asif Saab.
For follicular, yes, definitely you have to go for total thyroidectomy because you have to follow the patient with the scans. So if you have a remnant thyroid, normal thyroid tissue, you can't do the scanning and you can't detect your tumor. So it should be done.
Maria, there's a consensus on this, like Asif Saab said, that to leave it behind the normal thyroid tissue is only and only for papillary, right? And again, if there's a small tumor. But any kind of follicular carcinoma has to be followed by completion thyroidectomy.
Yes, sir. And so what about NIFTP that last time Muzaffaruddin Saab was also mentioning? So we can monitor that.
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
So the non-invasive follicular thyroid neoplasm, which is NIFTP, which has been included in the
Yes. Again, other factors will make you decide about the completion thyroidectomy. Again, the history of irradiation, history of close relatives, and bad histopathology. So that will make you decide to go for completion or not.
So there's a question from Dr. Syed Ahmed that is tracheostomy currently recommended for anaplastic carcinoma?
Asif Saab.
If the patient has a airway problem, then of course you can go for tracheostomy to provide the alternative airway to make the patient comfortable. Of course, the rest of the treatment depends upon the extent of the tumor itself, whether that would be a palliative type of surgery or the patient will go for surgery, total thyroidectomy followed by chemotherapy. But you have to give an alternative airway in the form of tracheostomy.
So another one is that
I think this tracheostomy is just like colostomy, ileostomy in our specialty. It will give you a breathing time and to make the rest of the things normal.
Yes, sir, agreed. So there's another question that the voice modulating devices for assessing speech quality, how do you compare with indirect laryngoscopy for occult recurrent laryngeal nerve injury?
Asif Saab.
I didn't get your question. Can you repeat your question, please?
So the question is that if there is an occult recurrent laryngeal nerve injury, so the role of voice modulating device for assessing speech versus indirect laryngoscopy.
You mean you want to assess whether the recurrent has been damaged or not?
Yes.
Okay, if you are worried about it and you are once you have completed your surgery and you are extubating the patient, you can ask the anesthetist to assess the movement of the vocal cord. If both the vocal cords are moving, you have nothing to worry. And God forbid, if there is some problem, then you might have damage or it has been damaged. So there are chances, but there are so many factors. If one vocal cord is immobile, you don't have to worry because there are chances of recovery in 6 months.
If God forbid both the vocal cords are immobile, that is a big problem. Then you have to go for tracheostomy to prevent immediate post-operative airway obstruction.
Okay, I hope that answers the question. Thank you, sir.
No more question?
Also, they were asking about the age cutoff limit for prophylactic thyroidectomy.
Age cutoff.
So
I
I
mean,
believe
age,
5 for men to A and less than 1 year for men to B.
yeah, it's up to within 3 years of life, the patient has to be operated for total thyroidectomy. Okay, there is one question about the nerve stimulator to identify the recurrent laryngeal nerve. I don't know, Asif Karim Saab will put light on that, but any kind of nerve injury has to be avoided by using modern technologies and modern equipment also. And if you have concentrated on the endoscopic thyroidectomy, and there is one constant probe, which is a nerve stimulator type of probe, which is constantly used while working near the recurrent and superior laryngeal nerve. So obviously, it's better to avoid rather than to treat. So you have to avoid injury to the recurrent or other types of nerves before it happens. Sir, role of nerve stimulator.
Definitely, if you have the luxury of nerve stimulator, that must be used. There's nothing like that. If you have the facility, if you have the department of anesthesia who have the facility, or the ENT department who has the facility, that must be utilized. Unfortunately, we don't have even facial nerve stimulator for the facial nerve. So what to talk about the recurrent? So that's the big problem in our setup. So we have to rely on our own experience and skills. But if you have the facility, that must be utilized, and that makes your life very easy.
So there's another question that if we have if we have a nodule of less than 1 centimeter and it's we do FNAC, it turns out to be papillary CA. Should we go for a lobectomy in this case or not, as it comes under the category of T1A, which is microcarcinoma?
Yeah, papillary microcarcinoma. Again, Maria, you have to decide on other factors. If the tumor is less than 1 centimeter and it has to be assessed post-operatively also, whether this is less than 1 centimeter size or number one. Number two, you have to make it sure that the contralateral lobe doesn't have any nodule, number two. Number three, you have to make it sure there is no capsular or other local intrathyroid extension also, because papillary is a kind of tumor which spreads inside the thyroid with lymphatics. And if there is no high risk patient and there is no family history of PTC and there is no history of irradiation, so okay, you can rely on the lobectomy only. But if it is combined with the other factors, then you have to decide there and then. So it's not only the size of the tumor which will make you decide, other factors are also contributory in decision.
And so we'll have to go for a lobectomy in any case.
You have to decide prior to surgery whether to go for lobectomy or total thyroidectomy, because it's totally totally different procedures. The patient has to be counseled, and the complication rate is different for the two procedures. So obviously, the procedure has to be decided prior to surgery. It's an elective surgery.
Actually, few countries have started to monitor such cases of microcarcinoma because they believe that it adds to the morbidity and there is not much benefit of even a lobectomy. So I think in our part of the world, we should go for a lobectomy in either case.
Okay, yes, yes, in developed centers where there is proper follow-up and the patient can be followed repeatedly. Okay, you can put the patient on surveillance prior to surgery. Yes, that's another. Any other question?
Sir, there's another question by Dr. Mohammed Asin that when you label a recurrent laryngeal nerve injury as permanent.
Okay, Asif Saab.
If it's unilateral, you wait for 6 months, and most of the time, you can assess after 6 months whether the nerve is recovering or not by movements of the vocal cord, or if the other vocal cord is taking its function and the voice improves. But if there is no mobility, say after 18 months of the vocal cord, then you label it a permanent. The standard time for labeling a permanent vocal cord palsy is 18 months. And that is the reason why we don't go for any reconstructive procedure before 18 months. That is the international recommendation for the management of vocal cord paralysis.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think the questions are almost over. We can wind it up.
Okay, Maria just announced the schedule for the next meeting and topic also. And that
Yes, sir. So from Monday,